Hello and welcome to NRL 360 on what is a very special night for our game. For the first time, two coaches have been inducted into the NRL Hall of Fame.
The super coaches, Wayne Bennett and Jack Gibson. 12 premierships between them. Jack began at the Roosters, later coaching them to back-to-back premierships in 1974 and 1975. Then, ding dong, the witch is dead. 3 premierships in a row with the Eels. The image of Jack in that famous fur coat will live on forever. Wayne Bennett, 7 premierships, 6 with the Broncos, and then in 2010 with the Dragons. And who can forget that? Along the way, coaching his state and his country, 933 games and still going. 2 giants of our game inducted into the NRL Hall of Fame.
Welcome, Gordon Tallis, Paul Crawley and Dean Ritchie. Well, they don't get any bigger or better. 2 amazing coaches. And let's start with the great Wayne Bennett. Gordy?
Yeah, well, his record speaks for itself, and it's fitting that he's going in with Jack, knowing, I reckon Jack was his mentor, and I think if Wayne ever wanted to emulate a coach, it was Jack. I know that Jack's great mentor and Ron Massey become Wayne's mentor as well, but Jack, he was just such an icon of the game. I remember being a kid in the fur coat and, just his sort of presence around the game. And then Wayne, well, mate, I thought he'd be retired by now, Wayne sitting in Cuba or somewhere like, but Wayne just, mate, well, you know what? It's surprising because I said years ago, what has a young 20-year-old got in common with a 70-year-old? But Wayne seems to still have that magic dust and get it out of him. So very fitting for both of those gentlemen.
I think it's incredible about Bennett for mine is not just his success but his longevity. He actually started coaching in 1973. He did a decade in the old Brisbane competition before he went to Canberra, and here he is. He turned 75 on New Year's Day and he's just signed a 3-year deal to go back to South Sydney where he'll be 78.
Incredible.
And he stayed at the top the whole time. It's just astonishing.
It's extraordinary to think too, in those 3 years at South, he will go past 1,000 NRL games as a head coach. That is hard to get your head around.
Jack Gibson, ahead of my time, but obviously heard a lot of stories and success stories as well, and heard a lot of my Uncle George about Jack, and everyone's got such amazing things to say about him.
John Quayle told a great story about Jack Gibson when Jack was a player at the Roosters, and everyone knew he loved to punt and he ran the SP and everything like that. Anyway, one day he turned up in a big white Cadillac and the following week in an old Holden, he'd lost a card game. He was an incredible man, and as a player he played in the 63 grand final for West, the controversial loss that they made the gladiator out of it, and apparently Noel Kelly was the West player at the time, and Jack had turned up that week. I'm not sure what day it was, but that week, and he told the boys that they weren't going to win the grand final because Darcy was on the other team.
I had dinner with him a couple of times, and it was before one of the big games, and I said, Jack, do you have any advice? And he never said much. He just looked at me and said, make your first play your best.
Yeah.
And I tried to get him to elaborate. He just shut up for the rest of the dinner. So he's just like those quirky one-liners, but like in those famous stories where he's playing Origin, he's coaching New South Wales. He's playing cards with Arthur. So like the night before the game, Arthur and he were playing
and he was
cards
he was the coach of the century in when it was announced in 2008. He won his first year. He started out, I think it was 67 or I think it was 67. East hadn't won a game. 66, and Jack took over the following year. They made the finals, and when he first announced to his great mate Ron Massey he was going to coach, Ron just laughed because Jack was anything but a coach, but he proved such an innovator, and he coached that great Roosters side that won the 74-75 premierships, 3 straight premierships at Parramatta. He was famous for man management before its time. He brought in the weights, the video from America. He started tackle counts. No one had ever done that.
He had a thirst for innovation, and America was his first stop. He had a very close association with the San Francisco 49ers. He was the first bloke to bring back the ideas of the NFL. As you touched on, Crawls, not just one legendary side, 74-5 East, but that Parramatta 81-3 will go down as arguably the greatest club side of the modern era.
Two incredible inductees. Now, broadcast icon Frank Hyde has also been inducted into the Hall of Fame as a contributor. Hyde called 31 consecutive grand finals on Sydney radio station 2SM and appeared regularly on TV as a rugby league expert. Frank made countless overseas trips covering kangaroo tours and left an incredible legacy on our game. Frank Hyde. What about him, Crawls?
Oh, well, look, if you grew up in the 60s and 70s, every kid that loved rugby league used to get out the backyard kicking goals, and as you did, you would use his famous line, "It's high enough, it's long enough, it's straight between the posts." That's the line he was famous for. And in those days when, you know, these days we have Fox League to watch all our games on, but in those days everyone sat by the radio and they listened to Frank Hyde. And he was the doyen of callers before Ray Warren.
He was a trailblazer.
He was.
He used to have the old rickety card table on the sideline.
Yeah.
Frankie would be there with his headphones on, and the ball boy would get in the way, and he'd rouse on the ball boy on the way and get out of my way, sit down in front. But an amazing commentator, possibly the greatest of all time, I think.
Is that right?
When you think about it, overall, Frank Hyde's voice and his dignity, I think, set him aside from everybody else.
Was he a bit before your time, Gordy, Frank?
Just a little bit, but I did end up meeting him. But like everybody's always spoken about Frank Hyde. So I did shake his hand on a few occasions. But just a little bit before my time.
Very nice, and stay tuned. Later tonight we cross live to legendary administrator John Quayle, who too has been inducted into the Hall of Fame as a contributor. Well, welcome back. Legendary Rugby League administrator John Quayle has been inducted into the NRL Hall of Fame. We're lucky enough to speak with him now. Congratulations, John. What does this mean to you?
Well, it's indeed an honour, Braith. I must say it was a wonderful surprise, and I think to be thought of in this way is, I guess, when you look back at a lot of the things we did when it was a time of great change, to be acknowledged now, and to be acknowledged along with my chairman, Ken Arthurson, is a wonderful thrill.
You mentioned Ken Arthurson there, John, and you two formed a formidable combination together. What was your relationship like with Arco?
Well, it was predominantly very good, but as he would say on numerous occasions when we formed a new board, we knew that the game had to change incredibly at that time, and there was a lot of opposition to change. And so we fought a lot, but I've got to say in those days we always came out when we wanted to make a very strong recommendation to the board. In those days we were always united. Ken always had that incredible knack of being able to say to me, "Now, mate, are you sure that this is going to work?" And I'd say on many occasions, "No, I'm not sure, but we have to try it." And I've got to say on all of those occasions, it was always a yes to change. It was always yes to the management structure that we had at that particular time. And there were some very big decisions that had to be made from changing the game to what it was like previously.
Hey John, it's Gordon. Tell us, obviously you're talking about a fight. Well, there was a big fight called the Super League War. It was brutal, especially for players, but as an administrator, how did you get through that, and did you think it was ever going to end?
Well, that was probably the toughest time for all of us, Gordon, because it was at a time it wasn't just about football, it was about the introduction of pay television into Australia, and our product at the time, or the game, had risen so well, it was respected across the nation and internationally, that both organisations, the Packer organisation, the Murdoch organisation, wanted it. And it became a fight on the basis of law, and that was a tough time. And but again, like the game has gone through so many things in its history, Super League is one of them. It was a massive part of the game, but again, we've seen how the game, the resilience of it, it's come back bigger and better, and to me it was a part of history.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Do you still watch the game, and what do you think of it now?
Oh, I think to me it was always a great game and always will be. I think we're very fortunate to see it now, that the way it is covered, incredible. You know, we had to do things like convince our clubs for live television. Back in those days, we had replays of an afternoon and the television networks weren't ready to cover it. In our early days, to try and convince that we would go live took many years of convincing and trialling. And things like introducing Monday Night Football with live television proved an outstanding success. And I think we always knew back then that television was the future of the game. And I think now, Gordon, as we see it today, the incredible exposure, the way it's covered across all fields now, the introduction of the women's game, I think we're all very fortunate that all of us have been part of it, can see the incredible success that it is today.
John, the Tina Turner campaign was probably the best promotion in world sport. Now, how did you pull that one off?
Well, it was certainly big, Braith, there's no doubt about that. We were very fortunate that our agency at the time, Hertz Walpole, see, at the time we were starting to expand the game. But as statistics showed, we were a game played by men, watched by men, and we needed to change. And we needed to change it through an advertising campaign. And we were fortunate that Hertz Walpole were able to come up with this particular theme. And the first commercial was "What you see is what you get," and people probably don't remember that. But it was the first time we took the players off the field of play, we made them sexy, we made them to become exposed off the field of play, and it was very successful. And then Roger Davies, who's the management of Tina, rung us and said, we have this song that Tina is going to produce on a new album that we think's been written for sport. And we were fortunate to be able to buy that theme, which was simply the best. And there's no doubt it is still rated today as one of the great sporting anthems across the world.
Well, John, it was iconic and we all thank you for that. And again, congratulations, amazing achievement, inducted into the NRL Hall of Fame, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for having me.